Welcome to the Dribble Podcast, your weekly fix of all things Perth Wildcats and Aussie basketball, presented by PerthNow.
G'day and welcome to the Dribble Podcast, where there's plenty to discuss after a week off, and you feel the Perth Wildcats will be discussing plenty behind closed doors after back-to-back losses in that time. My name's Chris Robinson from the West and PerthNow. The man alongside me is always cool in it's not a Perth Wildcats crisis, but I'm sure you'd love to be getting in there and just saying a few comments about what might be going on. Greg Hire, welcome back to the pod.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. I've tried to... I'll not say stay away from the club since my retirement, but I sort of, offer my words of advice or encouragement more so in the pre-season, off-season. But I definitely did check in on the guys and send a few more texts this week, making sure that they don't get worried as they do, because it's funny enough. Like it's, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but it is amazing how a win this week can change the whole environment around. But right now, it's obviously where I've been in that situation many of times. It's a unique experience, and it's always good to sort of get back in there a little bit and just and I guess give them a little bit of reassurance. It's a very long season. Yeah. So I'm interested in what your message to the guys would be or has been. Yeah. An 11-point loss to Adelaide. That 11 was really flattering in the end. Perth was down by as much as I think it got to 27 in the third quarter. Thoroughly outplayed on their home court, made to look quite second rate by Adelaide. Where are your concern levels? Is it a blip on the concern radar? And what is the advice that you are offering or would be offering if you were still back at the club? Yeah, I mean, it's been the 2 weeks. It's been obviously I've had a really hectic schedule with the gala dinner 2 weeks ago, and it was really bizarre. Like I remember getting ready in the room just beforehand and literally third quarter and the boys have won it, well done. Like I can actually enjoy myself a little bit. And the Cairns game,
up 10 at three-quarter time.
Exactly right. I was like, I'll have a whiskey on the way down and celebrate another win, and then only be told 3 hours later, they lost. I'm like, no, they didn't. I literally turned the TV off and they were sitting quite comfortably. And I was like, wow, okay. And so obviously I was like, okay, fair enough, on the road and all that sort of stuff. But then, again, we had this footy carnival, which I was kicked 2 goals at. You're welcome. But turned on the live scores and saw the Wildcats were up at 6, and then next thing I looked, they were down 14 heading into half time, and then at some point 26 points, and then sort of come back. And so there's obviously some worrying signs as such. I think it's as I've been talking to a number of players, I think it's a new group. There's so many different... It's interesting, even and I see, observe what's being said on social media and talk to fans. I've obviously got a lot of friendships now with fans, and they obviously talk to me, and I'm pretty open and frank. It's one... You can't compare any season, so everyone's keeps saying, at bottom of the ladder 2 seasons ago, we wanted to sack imports last year and replace them, and we still won a championship. It's a brand new group, irrespective of what happened and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's an inbuilt culture, but it's a brand new group, so they're still figuring things out. But with that as well, I think the identity has shifted dramatically too, and so I think right now that's where. I think they're still, which isn't a good thing, the playing style, they're still trying to figure out. And why I say that is, when you lost Big Angus and Tommy Jervis, they were a pretty focal piece, and defensively, they were really good. And then obviously that was one of my roles as well. And so the whole role and the dynamic has sort of changed, and that's what you're seeing at the moment, I think, is defensively, which has been the blueprint. They've been leaking points, and I saw that even from the start of the season, was getting out rebounded, or other teams, they were getting wins, but other teams were shooting at real high clip. And I always remember, even in previous seasons, if you do compare it, I'd always look at it and go, we got a win there, but they shot 45% from the 3, and that's all that sort of stuff. So, and then it evens out later in the season, you do get punished. So I think that's what they really need to look into. That the other side is offensively, and I was having a discussion with one of the boys. It's they still run the same system, flex offense. That's what Trev's offense is, but you can't even like that is such a significant loss was Gus and Tommy, and I'm saying obviously Gus was this is what you're seeing right now.
You're talking about screening ability here?
Screening ability and the post presence.
Yep.
When they struggled to score, obviously against Adelaide, defense was the issue, like blow-bys and all that sort of stuff. But when they're struggling to score, or when we struggle to score, there's obviously there's always been a presence. Tarico, Bryce, any other year, Jermaine Bill, Casey Prather, like there's always been the two-headed monsters, like those guys that get buckets, and then some guys pinch hit, and then you have cameos from Jesse, and you have Clint, or whatever it may be, Sean Redditch, all that. There's a little of that, but we're always, generally, when we won championships, the post player, we had a really dominating post. Nate Jaiwai, Angus Brandt, and that was all the years, right? And even Tommy off the bench, great passes off the post. But if we weren't scoring from the perimeter, or those guys weren't going, we would just throw the ball into them and say, "Hey, go to work." Point. And even at the start of the game, even that was the thing. Like, hey, we're going against Bogut. Get him in foul trouble straight away. Let's set the tone. Let's get him going. And I think that's what they're going. As much as you hear, we're quicker and faster and more athletic and all that sort of stuff, you're still running the same half court set where majority of your play goes with. And so that's what I think they need to figure that out and to go with that, because I think that's, I guess, a key ingredient they're sort of missing at the moment.
Bryce Cotton had a kid during the week. Congratulations, Bryce. If you're listening, fantastic life event. Yeah. Certainly was by no means the Wildcats' worst. Was actually the leading scorer on Sunday. I wanted to ask you about the challenges of being a dad, potentially coming off limited sleep, especially for the first time, adjusting to something new. Yeah. What kind of challenge is that for Bryce going forward? Yeah,
there's two ways. You either have an absolute blinder just because you're running on pure emotion and that, or because of the quality of play he has a bad game or a mediocre game and scores 18 points. But it's definitely it's a taxing thing.
It'd be an adjustment, right?
Oh, mate, and especially that's the thing. Like they're first-time parents. Yep. I know she's got fantastic support, but even that, like that whole it's a new world. And I even said that. I remember, I hit him up after obviously they were born and congratulated him and said, "How's it all going?" And it was that honeymoon period and bliss. And then I went down to training on Friday and saw him, and I was like, "How's it all going?" He's like, "Oh, mate, it's grueling. It's brutal." And I was like, "Yeah, welcome to parenthood, mate."
It's like 40 odd hours in.
Yeah, and it completely changed, like the dynamic. And he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Mate, this is an easy time." But especially that's in terms of if it was like past a week, that's when the adjustment, like the worst is, I think they would have had it on Monday or Tuesday, but it's when like the day 3 and 4 when the baby actually realizes they're out of her womb and they're in the real world, and they're like, what's going on? And no longer, it's, you start living the life. And so he'll be obviously better for it, more prepared. I hit him up last night and said, like, "Hey, can we just bring you around dinner?" And I know how tough it is just to be in a brand new thing that's your whole world consumed. And so it is, like, I mean, obviously sleep deprivation, and he'll learn that as the 3 other dads and the 2 now. But as always, you sort of, road trips is your moment to actually get sleep. You're you're actually excited to get on the road, so you can get more than 7 hours.
He hasn't timed this well because they've just come off the back of a big road trip. There's needed to happen a few weeks prior.
Exactly. So and then I think Clint's just around the corner as well. So So look, it definitely would have been, I think, and that's, if it's a close game, you would have just been running on pure emotion. But once it gets a blowout, he would have just been like, "God, what a horrible week this has been." So
I still love that Bryce's personality is just so even temperament. I think he was on Instagram afterwards saying never too high, never too low. Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. You just go on to the next one.
And exactly right, mate. Like I look at it and I have a bit of a laugh because I look at it and go, and we discuss the levels, and I say, like Sydney are by far, and then obviously adding Cooks is, like another element, and they're 11-1. But I look across all other 8 teams, and none of them have put up their hand and said, "Oh yeah, we're bona fide championship contenders." Like the Wildcats still sit second. It's just like, I mean, I read a stat like Sydney. I think the biggest difference in games ahead at this round in NBL history in terms of round 9, I think being ahead by 3.5 games.
Yeah.
So that just shows where they're at. And don't get me wrong, it's not that they've been dominated teams. They're a quality team, so they get those quality wins where they find a way to win. But I mean, look, that's the thing. Wildcats have an opportunity here that. There's some question marks already happening and all that sort of stuff. And I think it comes just with the environment. I mean, before it was just an expectation, all right, make the playoffs and that's good enough. And now it's no. Like you have to actually be competing for a championship. Now, being realistic, that is not going to happen every single year. Like, I mean, I love it. It happened a lot, but even in my career, like we're 4 from 10, like, so, and that's rare, like in professional sports. So, I think we have to look at that and go, like, it's still very early. It's tough because I think, what's going to be asked is this goes and this is the inner sanctum or whatever, but if they lose and they get dominated against Sydney, that's when decisions will be made. Okay, are we going to compete for a championship or we have to make a change? And I guess it's a good time if there is, because they can make it, not, with 6 games remaining or 8 or when it's too late. So sure. It sucks. I'll never want to ever think about that, but that's if there's a timing of when it can happen, and if they get a quality win, they go, we actually do have the right guys, which I think they do have the right guys. So interesting times, and a lot of I guess those questions will be answered this Friday night. Yeah,
massive game on Friday night. A lot riding on that one, and then having to back it up on Sunday as well.
I mean, the
against
stretch that
Melbourne.
That got now, even though they're at home, is brutal. I think it's four games in 7 or 8 days. It's crazy. It is nuts. And like, I mean, you look at it, and this is where the interesting time goes. Like, everything can be changed so quick, so fast. And I look at it. I think they're 8-4 or 8-5.
8-5.
Yeah, 8-5. So, I mean, they could go 4-0 and 12-5, and you're laughing and going, well, what happened? But it's going to be an interesting time for sure.
One of the shining lights from Sunday was Luke Travers, who's a young man that you know plenty about from playing down at Rockingham. Got a chance to come on the floor just because there was a blowout, which is the opposite of what you normally see with development players at Perth Arena when the blowout is in the other direction. Came on for I think he played the last 11 minutes straight. Was really, really good. Impressed me with his composure. Didn't look like he was daunted at all by the situation. Sometimes you see guys come in their first game, or the DPs, and their eyes are wide and they're a bit nervous. He looked like he belonged out there. Can you sort of tell us a bit about this 18-year-old and what he's like and what his potential is for the future? Yeah,
I said that like a year or two ago when I first met him. I thought he is an actual NBA player caliber sort of guy. And his demeanour, it's funny, everyone's first impressions is like he doesn't care, or he doesn't have that that tenacity that you sort of need at that next level. But I think that's what is so uncompromising about him, is that demeanour actually helps him so much. Like, as you said, it comes in there.
He was undaunted.
In front of a pretty big environment and does so well. And that's all I've been really hearing is how bad the Wildcats were and how good he played. So that's obviously a good thing. And obviously he's got a lot of room and growth. He's coming back from an injury. But I think the best thing that when I got to play alongside him at Rockingham was his playmaking ability. He's one of the smartest guys I've actually played with in my career. And that's a rare skill. That's what usually separates the good from the best. Because even though he is athletically really long as well, and his shot's developing, that's the one thing. Like he could read the play. Like, I knew if I drove here, he would cut there. If he was driving, I'd be cutting, and he would find me. And you saw that he had 4 assists in limited time. And I honestly think he'll. I said that when I was speaking to an assistant coach, because an overseas team were trying to recruit him, and I was saying, like, you should sign him. Like, if he's not going to college, like, he's a genuine star. Like, he could actually contribute in the system that the Wildcats play. Like, he's not going to be your main guy, right? Like, you've got your guys, but he'll pinch hit. He'll be able to get in the lanes. He'll get a couple of steals. He'll help rebounding. He'll do that. A couple of deflections, and he can hit the three. And the one thing is he, as you said, he's not daunted by the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think as he continues getting into it, it'll be interesting. And I think they can use that piece right now. They don't have. That's the thing. I think they really haven't had that backup three that we had from that physical. Like where I went in there, and maybe I wasn't your prototypical three that he is. Like even though he plays the 1 and 2, he will fit that 3 mold that they play. So I think he could really complement them well. That's for sure.
Do you think he works his way into the rotation from now, or do you think he?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, I think it. I think, and this is the way is. I think obviously Wani had the opportunity to do so and had a really good pre-season, but I think what you're going to look at even from coming in December, if Luke's got a month to play, and if Luke's playing well, Trev just plays those guys. He's not going to be like, oh, well, sorry, you're contracted, you're a development player. He's going to play those best guys. We saw that years ago when Reece was a development player. Reece got minutes over contracted guys. So, I think he'll definitely put himself in the rotation mix. Until they sort of figure each other out, because I think he will. I honestly think, that's what I looked in that 11 minutes. Like he had 4, 2 and 3, or 4, 3 and 4, and it was a blowout win. So you also do need to put little things in perspective. Like it's a bit different if it's a 4 or 6 point game and you come in and there's a little bit of pressure.
Of course,
but I have no doubt that he's good enough. I think he's a guy that if he does go on the current trajectory of what he's has the potential to do, he won't play in this league for long, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I compare to Joe Ingles in terms of that sort of the way they play.
Sure.
So I think the club's pretty lucky to have him.
Yeah, I think it needed to be noted as well. Obviously, as you say, the margin was beyond repair for Perth, but the guys he was playing against, it wasn't the end of Adelaide's bench. They still had Randall and Johnson and Jim out there.
Yeah.
So he wasn't playing against scrubs. That was really encouraging.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like even when I looked at it, I was like, I looked at the back of the last game because I wanted to see and see what context of the game, whether that was just like a blowout and what it is. But no, he was playing quality minutes, and credit to him. And one thing Trev does love that he'll give you an opportunity, and so he'll throw him in the fire in this game if there's a moment that's asked.
Sure. If there's one thing we know about Trev, he'll keep the guys rolling that are rolling, and he likes to say that, and that was certainly. Yeah, I'm sure Luke Travers probably wouldn't have thought that he'd get on the floor
in his debut game.
For 11 straight minutes to close out the game. It was something. Mate, we're going to have a bit of fun. Wildcat of the Decade. This is something that the club put out yesterday. It's an initiative. They're trying to find out who is the best player of the, 2010s?
Yep.
And they gave us an 8-person shortlist, which
really
reads as follow. Sorry. How did Matty Knight not get on this shortlist, by the way?
Yeah, we'll obviously talk about the guidelines because it's going to be a really weird voting situation.
Yeah.
Like how it happens and how you perceive it.
Let me go through the list. So we've got Sean Redditch, Jesse Wagstaff, Bryce Cotton, Casey Prather, Damien Martin, Jermaine Beale, James Ennis, and Kevin Lish. They're sort of, the way that the Wildcats are structured it, they're sort of in a bracket going up against each other, but I thought it'd be fun if you and I just did. Just forget the bracket, let's just do our top 3.
Yeah.
In terms of player of the decade. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Yeah, well, when I was thinking about this, because even when I was looking at the head-to-head matchups, and there were so many things, and I was thinking about going, but we could be here all day and actually setting like a guideline. So I was like, if you were an MVP winner, you get 5 points. If you get a first team or an award. But then it goes to how long have you been in that club for, and the impact you had. Because I look at it and go, so initially, like when did Shawnee retire?
The end of 2016 or 2017. I think it was the end of 16.
So, but even that, so like Kev, like I love him, but then like he was there for 3 years, and Jermaine was even 4. Yeah,
Jermaine was 3, I think.
Yeah, so like even those guys, and then you're right, like Matty Knight, who I would have over Jermaine Bill, even though Jermaine. So that's the thing, like a grand final MVP.
Yeah, I think if I throw my 2 cents in here, the way that I sort of thought about it when I broke it down was I gave sort of 3 just broad categories in terms of assessing it. So the first one is just basic skill / talent, which is why anyone plays the game, what makes someone great. The second one is historical significance.
Yeah.
So if you're putting up, 30 a game, but your team finishes last, it doesn't quite have that. And then the third one is longevity.
Yeah, of course.
So how long you've been able to do it for. So it's kind of tough to factor those in because it depends how you feel about James Ennis as opposed to Jesse Wagstaff, who's been doing it 10 years. How do you compare those two guys?
Well, initially, if you said, who's your top 3 players that you've played with or in that space?
That's a different discussion.
Straight away. But someone just said, name your decade. I would go, on the top of my head, I'd say Damien Martin, Bryce Cotton and James Ennis.
And Mike Dunnigan misses out.
Unlucky. Yeah. But my thing is, because I'd go, Damo is going to be a no-brainer, obviously. For obvious reasons. We don't even need to go that. But then I go, James was... Well, in essence, transformed the league. Even though it was 1 year, the first time since a long time, an NBA draft pick, all that sort of stuff was so dominating. Maybe the league was perceived as a less in strength in previous in back time, but I still I argue that. But he was so dominating, it was ridiculous.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and then I go, well, Bryce in the last 2 years, arguably the best player in the league too, and I'm looking at he'll be here for a long time. So, this is his 3rd season now. So,
I think it's his 4th season.
Is it
now.
4th?
Well, he had sort of a half season to start with.
because we lost
and then
1
this
year.
is now
Okay,
his,
so it's
his
4th.
Yeah,
So even that. So then I look at that. So, it's unique, and then you go, well, Shawnee's was so that's. I think it's different, right? Because Shawnee was so dominating, but then the last 2-3 years, his role completely changed to what it was, say, from the early 2010s.
Yeah.
Because I remember 1 year Sean won Gordon Ellis medal, and I remember walking upstairs, and his name was 6 years in a row, and I remember thinking, the way he's going, and obviously not knowing what the league was going to do, and you're going to bring in James Ennis, I was like, he's going to win 12 Gordon Ellises in a row. But then the next year it might have been after the hips, and then everything completely changed, and the whole league's completely changed. Dynamic.
Yeah. So my thoughts on Sean are, if we do this thing 5 years prior, if we do this from 06 to 15 or something, Redditch wins by the length of the straight.
Easy.
Forget about it. And even if you do 2000 to 2010, he probably wins that one as well.
Correct. Yeah.
I'll give you my top 3 because I think we're probably on the same page here. My number 1 is Damo.
Yeah.
So again, I'll look at my sort of 3 categories: skill/talent, 6-time defensive player of the year, arguably the best defensive player in history, won a grand final MVP as well. Historical significance, you look at the culture that he's helped create and maintain, impeccable character, and the significance in establishing that culture. And then longevity, he's played every one of the past 10 seasons. So he's the guy who gets it. Bryce is my second, who's, as we discussed, starting to get there with longevity now in his 4th season. MVP, grand final MVP, one of the best Wildcats to ever wear a singlet. And then I'm sneaking Ennis into 3.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, longevity counts for very little because it was one and done.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you on that historical significance point.
Yeah.
In terms of opening that pathway to the NBA, that's just so wide now.
Yeah, for sure.
And has quite literally transformed the league and transform the caliber of the league, and there's not many guys that you can say that about in NBL history. James Ennis is one of those few guys.
It's one of those rare things that when people weren't dropped away from the NBL, they were still talking about Ricky Gray. They still talk Ricky Gray, James Crawford. Even I remember seeing the poll or the comp go up, and people were still like, "What about Ricky?" And I'm like, "It's a decade thing. Ricky hasn't been playing for 2 decades." But it's a thing that now you see fans talk about James, about Ennis, they're like, that was sort of, you're moving into the arena, all that sort of it was like the whole league starting to grow again, and he was the reason for it. And I still see Ennis jerseys floating around. It's ridiculous. He definitely transformed even that one year. And I remember then, we, because of how successful he was that year, I was like, all right, we got to get another one, and you get it. Not the right outcome with DeAndre Daniels, and and then Melbourne went after Jordan McRae, and that was the start of it. And so I agree. I look at it. Look, Casey Prather, definitely. Part of me is always that that's the sort of, it's that the loyalty, but it's that sort of the romantic bit. If you move to another club, just like Jermaine, Casey, and Kev, I'm going to be bitter. So irrespective, like if Bryce goes to another team, and more than likely it'll be Sydney, just the way they are at the moment.
Jeez, I
Mate, I know Paul
that.
Smith is listening. So
Don't even want to think about that.
but yeah, so like if then I'd be like, nah, no way. Like I'm putting Everard Bartlett before Bryce.
Everard Bartlett, former slam dunk contest winner.
But you know what I mean? Yeah. So
are you happy with that order?
Yeah, I
Damo,
think so.
Bryce, and then James.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the only person I would have in there is like you'd think Shawnee, but it's because you knew. But then it's like 2010. And it's only about 3-4 years, so you sort of forget about it.
Yeah.
Damo is unanimous, but even that, like none of those guys, I'm like, oh, would I? Yeah, like I don't really consider it. The only thing is I would have, when you had that 8, I would have put in Matty Knight over. Yeah, it would have been Jermaine Bill. Yeah, interesting.
I will give Dollar Bill this though. It's still the craziest thing I've ever seen in that building. Was when he hit those 10 threes in a row. That is, I watched every game of the Ennis era. I've watched Bryce. That is the craziest thing, hands down, I've seen in that building. Yeah, he was just pulling up from the logo and on the fast break as a heat check and just kept heat checking and kept knocking him down. It was unreal. Craziest thing I've ever seen in that building.
What did he end up with that game? 45?
40. I think it was 40 even from memory.
Yeah, okay. And he had 10, right?
10 in a row. 10 straight.
10. Really?
It was 10 straight. Yeah, from about, I think it was midway to late in the second quarter through to, I think, possibly the end of the third quarter. I'll go YouTube it after this.
Oh, I remember that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was against
just
Melbourne.
Unreal.
Even like Chris Goulding, I remember one, I was like chasing him down and like Dollar went. I remember that's one of the
and
best.
just pulling up from every, and then giving it to the crowd, asking for more. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen in that building, hands down.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Unreal. That sort of leads me into one of our fan questions in terms of Dollar sort of looking at the crowd and potentially the commentary booth as well. This one's from Simo88.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the league's broadcasting hub instead of having callers travelling to games? So for those people who haven't quite picked up on it yet, aside from a sideline reporter at each game, the main calling team is being done from a central hub in, I think it's Melbourne, and they're basically calling the games off a screen. Which is a change from previous years. The league now owns their sort of broadcasting right. They're putting the product together, and it's evidently a money saving issue. Do you think that's detracted from the quality of the call? Do you like it? Is it a reality?
I'll be honest,
I
don't like it. It's funny. Like I look at it and go, I think it's sort of the same approach that's sort of in the NBA, I guess, in a way, like the hub or whatever, like sort of inside the NBA, the pre-game show, but which I would be all for. Like I think to do that, but then they still have their commentary team courtside, so it does. I think you lose that even those moments, and we discussed it, I think maybe the very first one, but it's like when Bryce hit that 3
last season,
like you don't
called out homicide.
You don't get those moments. Like he loved it, Bryce loved it. Like all that. And I think even there's been a few times like I've been watching the game, and I think because the sound's built into the studio, it's not on the court, and so there's been like, I remember going against New Zealand, there's some like massive plays, and then like rewatching the game, and like you would have not even known from the except for the excitement from the broadcast team, but it's still like tough, like they're in that and you're watching from a camera. So look, I understand from a cost saving thing, because from what I've heard, they're saving ridiculous amounts of money, maybe a meal and stuff, because you're looking at like it's not just that, it's the flights for the commentary team, the broadcast, and then hotels, all that sort of stuff. But then I look at it and go, I think there's enough quality talent in each place to do that.
So this is where I'll jump in. I mean, why not? What is wrong with the model? First, I'll raise 2 points. First of all, I think less is more when it comes to this stuff. So I'm not sure why we need 3 callers plus a sideline guy. I think 2 callers is enough. One play-by-play guy and one colour guy or girl, obviously.
For sure.
Which is, for by and large, the American model that we say. I'm not really sure why we go more is less as opposed to less is more. And the system that we've had in previous years has been, if it's a Perth game, Lockie Reed lives here. He's one of the best callers going around. Let's get him to do that. Same with John Casey in Adelaide, lives in Adelaide. the only negative you can see from that is if there is a perception of bias because that guy lives there and roots for the home team. But with those two guys we're talking about, that's just not a thing.
Yeah, I know.
Lockie and Case are two of the most professional, unbiased callers you could hope for. That's simply not a factor there. So I'm not sure why we've moved away from that model.
Yeah, it's curious. It is interesting. And I look at it and go, look, irrespective of if you had Dennis Kameni, Bruce McAvaney, or whoever, and they were seen as a Wildcats that had any alliance, like they're always going to say, irrespective of how good and how professional they are, people are going to still be negative. Like you can't please everyone. That's always going to be the case. But from their overall product, I agree. I think it unfortunately has been compromised in a way. Like I've missed that, and even just the things that you miss when you're not at the game. Like,
I agree. There's been a few times where there's been a call gets made and then we go to a replay of something and the commentary team has almost guessed or come up with their best version of what the call was, and then you go to a replay and then you come back and you're like, oh no, hang on, that wasn't the call. It was a block instead of a charge, or it's different ways possession. What
I actually would love to see, and I hope the NBL actually are listening, but my thing is that central focus, whether that's the team, and if they want to do that and do like, no one really cares about you going through the stats at halftime and saying, they've scored 42%, or hey, they've scored 54%, from the field. That's a perfect opportunity to build storylines. That is a perfect opportunity to build brands or to raise the profile of guys. Like that's an opportunity for even put the onus on the clubs themselves to provide content and video. Like, there's some unbelievable footage that's going around from Illawarra at the moment.
Yeah,
like,
doing a terrific job there.
Move that at halftime, or like go do that, because like sometimes, and that's even like these pre-game interviews. Sometimes you're like it's the same thing, or it's awkward. Even like I understand LaMelo, like let's do it because he's the number 1 draft pick, but then he gives you 4 words, and it's like okay, like give him a better opportunity to maybe showcase what he is. Like go to his house like 2 days before and do that interview where he's comfortable and put him in that light, and you get to see that character. Like, let's see about Sunday Detch like doing well. Hey, Wildcats, like breast cancer game, like what was the lead up to that, and showcase that at half time and build that stories, because we miss out, and that's a perfect opportunity to do that. Because I think so much is talking about the game, we see that, but it's not like if you watch like the NBA, right? Like everyone loves the inside the NBA. It's the gimmicks, it's the banter, it's like that. It's that opportunity where they actually have the entertainment side of it, and they don't ever talk about the game. Like they might talk a little bit, like, and they'll say, Shaq will say how bad the Suns are. I mean, Barker will say how bad the Suns are, but that's it. And the same even another code like AFL doesn't. Like they talk about Oz kids, or they do that. I think, you speak enough in the game about what's going on in the game. Yeah, that's a perfect opportunity there to build those storylines, to build the profile. You're at a really critical stage right now where, you want to be able to switch on the TV and remember that guy's name, and if you can do a little bit of a feature piece in those moments, I think it actually would be a benefit.
That's a great shout. I just want to see Lockie and Case back calling. Oh, mate, Lockie's a pro, and Case is the voice of the league for the past 2 decades. Yeah, I just want to hear him behind a mic.
And it's crazy to like even that. Like, I mean, Liam Santa Maria does an absolutely fantastic job.
Sure does.
And we've had other stuff, and those opportunities have existed because they allowed those guys to travel in the past. If we had this system where it was like, okay, we're going to go with it, like the same commentary team, like you're going to unearth those guys who are now doing a really significant piece. Like there's some really, really strong people in the media. They're doing really, but now it's sort of like diluted in a way and said, oh, no, we're just doing this. So.
Yeah. One to watch for sure. Last fan question. This is from Murray Dunstan. Who do you consider, for you, Greg? Who do you consider the best coach you played for, and why? And I'm opening this up to your entire career, college, juniors, NBL, whatever you like. Who is it? One of your junior guys who had one of the bigger influences on you? Do you go with one of the professional guys? How do you sort of rank it? And have you ever thought about it before?
Yeah, no, I definitely have. I think it's so different to go. It's not a straightforward question to be like, I like him. I mean,
they all give you something different, right?
Yeah, and if I said, look, who do you, like, and I can talk, like Rob Beveridge was the first guy that gave me an opportunity and like really in terms of confidence, like built that confidence. Like without him, I would have not had the career I had, and it gave me an opportunity to shine. Now, like that would be the easy answer. A guy that gave you a contract and was a start and put me in the starting five, and then then people would be like, oh well, Trev obviously is not your favourite coach because you got moved down to the bench. But there's a guy that ultimately you get championship success. Like in terms of growing as a leader, definitely installed those qualities and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So I think, like there's that side. But then I even look at the assistant coaches that I've had. That I've never had the opportunity to have head coach, but both Matt Nielsen and Adam Ford, like they're head coaches in the making, just because of not only exceptional coaching ability, but more so from the human side of things and that character, like the amount of conversations. That's the guy that I talk to about retirement, like Nelly and 40, the amount of times that we conversed, and his dedication and commitment. Like, so there's that. Like, it's pretty crazy. And then I look at I've been fortunate enough that just even the 3-on-3, like Dave Buer, who I just got, like he's a guy that I would actually, if I wanted to play NBL 1, I would play in a heartbeat. Like in recent times, how crazy it is, because he is me, but as a coach, like just an absolute. Okay. I'll run through a wall for him. Like now, does that work in 5-on-5? I'm not sure, but he's won a championship for Nutter Wadding, and I have unbelievable respect for him and just the way he does, and that's in a short time. Like I absolutely love him, and so I'd say he's one of the best coaches. So it's crazy. Ben Ettridge at SBI won a championship with, and he was a teacher of mine. And Ryan Petra. I think to say one coach, it'd be easy. It's a cop out to go, oh yeah. I think each guy. I've been very fortunate that I haven't had a bad coach. That's like, and when I mean that, like it's easy to know when you've got a bad coach, because you just know straight away, like I'm not listening to this
guy. You've probably seen some bad opposition coaches in
exactly.
NBL time, right? There's been a few floating around.
Yeah, exactly. And even, I see even at junior levels and all that sort of stuff, like you just like look at him, and I'm still in this space, but I've been fortunate enough to every single coach that I've had, like obviously you have your disagreements and you have your issues at times, but every single one has made me a better basketball player and a better human as well. And so that's all you can ask for as a coach, because they're more than just a coach. They're a mentor. At times they're a father figure, especially in my life. They do an unbelievable job. I think that's what it takes aside. I think that's even when you look at it in the whole, the scope and the magnitude, like it's more than just wins and losses. Like coaches, like and players, like you live everything. Like when, like that environment, they lose on Sunday, they're back training. Like on Monday, like those guys would have been like spewing on a Sunday, like knowing like what it is. And those coaches do that. That's their life. Like players in a way can forget about it, right? They go home, get to their kids or their mates, and they forget about the coaches. Have to go back and they have to start evaluating and reviewing the process. So it's crazy. So I've been very fortunate enough to been done that. I'm sure hopefully. I didn't point out Jacob Chance because, as I said, he does listen to this and he's a horrible coach. Because he would have been like, of all coaches, like, I didn't get a shout out.
I really hope Chancey makes it to the last 2 or 3 minutes of these podcasts just for his individual.
No, because last time he had a bit of a go because he's like, you love Sydney. And I was like, they're sitting on top of the ladder, mate. What would you like? I can't, what do you want me to do?
They're ticking along okay. We know 40's at Sydney will be here this week. Yeah. How's Nelly going? Have you had much to do with Matt Nielsen? It's been. I actually just bought a car off him, so bought his car, so it was nice in the Spurs. But it's been good. He absolutely loves it. It's funny because he just said 5 weeks ago as he was transitioning and it was all about to kick off and everything's really good, and then I just spoke to him. I was like, you're on an 8-game losing streak. That's unheard of in Spurs world, whatever. And he's like, yeah, it's bizarza. Like it's longest weird. Since Pop's first season there in 96, 97. I think
and that's it's even weird. Like it's like the Wildcats making the playoffs. Like even when I just went into ESPN yesterday just to check on the standings, and then I was like, oh wow,
it's been rough.
Yeah, like you just don't.
Been rough.
Is that your team?
Yeah, it's my team. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I watched them win the season opener, which was against the Knicks, which you had to take care of business there. And then as soon as I left the States to come back here, it's just gone.
There's room. Is DeRozan out? That's the rumours, right?
There's talk that he might get traded. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you have. I don't know. The whole analytics movement, you've got your two biggest stars are Aldridge and DeRozan who just thrive in the mid-range. And I don't know if there's room for both of them in that system anymore.
Yeah, okay.
That's the talk.
Tough time. Like Golden State and Spurs are sitting at the bottom of the
I know.
Who would have
It's bizarre. They're the two arenas that I went to to go and watch two NBA games, and now they're just tanking out.
Oh, that's right. The new media pass, right?
No, I didn't. I didn't use it. I forked out good money to go and watch the Warriors. I saw 3/4 of Steph before Aaron Baines fell on him and broke his hand. Mate, let's crystal ball before we get out of here. You nailed the loss to Cairns a couple of weeks ago, so you were hesitant. It was the first time we'd ever seen you speechless on the podcast. You didn't really want to go there, but then you sort of saw it coming. Didn't work for the first 3/4, and then you nailed him in the end. I struck out. I called Adelaide to upset Brisbane, and they really should have. That was a Friday night game where they didn't execute late. Brisbane had a horrible shot, and they got bailed out by an O-board from Patterson. Yeah. So I struck out, but you're still going at 100%. I'll take someone to get tossed on Friday night. Someone's going to get ejected on Friday night. I'm putting it out there. We've got Bogut in the building. We've got the Wildcats with a little bit of tension. Trevor Gleeson's getting a bit frustrated. I don't know who it's going to be, but someone's getting tossed on Friday night. That's my bold call.
Wow. Okay.
What do you got?
If I was playing, I would have said, you're on. Like that's
I'll take one for the team. Take one for the team in the dying minutes.
Well, I'm going to be a bit controversial here and say there's going to be an import. Yeah, there's going to be a roster change in this next week. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I'm being pretty good. No, You're
not going to name a club?
Oh.
Can I guess between Southeast Melbourne and Brisbane?
Yeah, well, see, that's the easy one, right? But I reckon...
So what's the hard one, Sydney?
No. Well, they'll be fine. Adelaide's fine. Yeah, they're your two. New Zealand, but they're not even... Yeah. I reckon it's one of those two. Yeah. But
okay.
It's at a critical stage in this year.
It is about that kind of time, isn't it? You've ticked into December. You're reaching the halfway mark. If you're going to make a change, it has to be over the next sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Well, you have to. If you look at it now, and because this is the thing, as I said, there's been no separation. Like you go, Sydney, they're there, but out of all those other, and you're like, well, I mean, even Cairns have showed that.
Yeah, there's not even a bad team really.
And then Illawarra, I don't think they're going to make it until they make a roster, but I think it's still too late. And I feel like right now Illawarra are thinking, well, LaMelo Ball getting triple doubles.
Let's just get him to number one in the draft.
It's just better for us and viewer feeds than bringing in a guy that's going to get us wins ultimately. But so then I look at it and so New Zealand, don't think even though they got a win, it was against Illawarra. So Brisbane, Adelaide, Southeast, Melbourne, put a hat over them and see who's going to Perth, So I think that's where you're like, well, are we going to compete for a championship or we're just going to stay strong? And I think that's you're at that critical stage right now, and there's been a few losses, like even Melbourne right now, like.
You put Casey on notice a couple of weeks ago.
I did, but as much as I hate to do it because he's such a good bloke, it's that thing like everyone's talking about Wildcats losing. Like Melbourne went 0-2, in Cairns and in Sydney, and that's the thing. Like you lose in Cairns, which you're supposed to win, which Wildcats, but then they lose to Sydney, who are championship favourites. And so for me, that's what I'd be looking at. I wouldn't be going, we're going to make... I'd be like, are we legitimately going to win a championship? And right now they can't. They all say, no, well, we got pumped by Sydney. And ultimately I think Sydney are going to be top 2. So that's what clubs will be now looking at, going, well, are we legitimately going to be able to compete with Sydney? And right now, with the addition of Xavier Cooks, I think everyone's like, I don't know what we're going to do. But, I think it's, that's what you'll be looking at. And then, do you want to make any change?
If I gave you a choice between Sydney winning the title or any other club winning the title now, you're taking Sydney?
Yeah.
Sydney against the field?
Well, not even Cook's coming back. You got Kev coming back.
Yeah, this is the thing that some people are forgetting. They've been doing this without Kev. Who's a former MVP of the league.
Taylor is an important done, and he had a good game. He's been relatively quiet, but Kev knows the NBL. He's a great defender. The only thing is he's had a few injuries now, but it wasn't a muscle injury. So, I just look at it and go, my thing is that whole Cook signing, that is the one critical piece where if I looked at a weakness, that was that. Like,
and it was probably the bit that they looked at as well. And
yeah,
said,
well, like I look at Kickett was playing minutes at the 5.
Yeah.
You know, and so then like Tate was swapping up there. They'll now be able to put Cooks like at the 5, you know, or whatever. Like that's how they'll play it. Like it's small ball and. It's a pretty like silly thing that you can do is to be able to bring in that quality, and then with the addition of Kev,
and a good coach as well, as we've discussed. Okay, the kiss of import death from Greg High, which rarely fails. Watch this space over the next week, mate.
I'm going to call an agent like on Monday morning if it's not happening.
Get it done, mate. Get out of here. We'll chat to you next week, and to our listeners, stay tuned to the West and PerthNow. Thanks for listening. We'll chat to you next time.
The Dribble Podcast is brought to you by PerthNow, your home of sporting action from home and abroad.